I headed to the lake house to unwind for the weekend. But the kitchen and living room were gutted for renovation. My mom said, "We're redoing it for your brother and his wife." I opened my property deed and called my lawyer. The next day, my whole family received a big surprise. What if everything you'd ever worked for, your hard-earned peace, your personal sanctuary, was shattered into a million pieces by the very people you trusted most? The ones who were supposed to love you unconditionally? I still grapple with that question, because for me, it wasn't a hypothetical. It was my brutal reality. The afternoon sun beat down, deceptively warm, as my tires crunched onto the familiar gravel driveway of my lake house. I could almost taste the quiet, feel the tension draining from my shoulders, already envisioning 3 blissful days of absolute solitude. But the moment I pushed open that front door, a wave of thick, choking dust and a deafening, unnatural silence told me everything I cherished was gone. I'd been counting down the days to this weekend, a much-needed reprieve after 6 grueling months closing the Henderson deal. My job as a commercial real estate broker in Austin pays the bills, sure, but lately, the relentless pressure had been crushing. This lake house, my 2-hour escape into the hill country, was my sanctuary. It was where I breathed again. Now, the air was thick with the grit of destruction. My living room, the one I'd meticulously designed with cream sofas and vintage photographs capturing lakeside memories, was gone. Just vanished. In its place, skeletal exposed beams, gaping holes in the drywall, and the cold, stark reality of construction equipment strewn across what used to be my gleaming hardwood floors. My sneakers crunched on debris as I took another step, and my chest seized. The kitchen? Worse. The custom cabinets I'd saved for 3 years to buy were ripped out, leaving ugly, gaping wounds in the walls. My beautiful marble countertops, installed just last spring, lay shattered on the floor like a broken dream. And my vintage farmhouse sink, the one I'd driven 4 hours to San Antonio to find, to bring home, it was just missing. In its place, a hulking concrete mixer, surrounded by boxes of new, unfamiliar cabinetry. I stood there frozen. My mind simply refused to compute what my eyes were seeing. This was my house. I had bought it 5 years ago, with my money, my down payment, my mortgage payments, every single agonizing month. I'd poured countless weekends into this place, driving back and forth, choosing every paint swatch, painstakingly refinishing the dock, planting flower beds along the path leading to the water. It was a piece of me. My phone was already shaking in my hand when I heard footsteps on the porch, shattering the grim silence. "Chloe, sweetie, you're here early," my mother chirped, stepping through the destroyed doorway. Her bright smile, the one she usually reserved for bridge club, froze and then crumpled the instant she saw the horror etched on my face. She was wearing her crisp white linen pants and a coral blouse, her silver hair pulled back in her usual impossibly neat bun. My father, looking deeply uncomfortable in cargo shorts and a fishing vest, shuffled in behind her. "What happened to my house?" My voice was barely a whisper, a strained, broken sound I didn't recognize. My mother waved a dismissive hand, carefully picking her way around a mountain of shattered tiles. "Oh, don't you worry about the mess, darling. The contractor said they'll have everything cleaned up by next month. It's going to look absolutely beautiful when it's finished." Finished? I stared at her, the word echoing with a sickening absurdity. "Mom, what are you even talking about? Who authorized this?" She blinked at me, her confusion unnervingly genuine. "Well, we did, honey. Your father and I. We've been planning this renovation for months." My mind reeled. I pulled out my phone, scrolling frantically through weeks of texts from her. Dozens of messages, but they were all the usual mundane updates. My nephew's baseball scores, invitations to Sunday dinner, reminders about my cousin's upcoming wedding. Nothing. Absolutely nothing about demolishing my entire house. "There's nothing here about a renovation," I said, holding up my phone, my voice shaking with disbelief and a rising panic. My father cleared his throat, shifting his weight. "Your mother mentioned it at dinner 3 weeks ago. You said it sounded fine." I stared at him, my brain trying to latch onto something, anything. I said what sounded fine. The remodeling, My mother interjected, her tone laced with exasperation, as if I were the one being unreasonable. We told you we wanted to update the kitchen and open up the living room. You were on your phone, but you nodded and said it sounded nice. A hazy memory flickered. Sunday dinner at their house, me utterly drained from a week of brutal negotiations, trying to manage client emails discreetly under the table. My mother had been talking, as always, about something. I probably had nodded, my mind miles away. Even if I made some noncommittal sound, I said, my voice rising slightly, which I honestly don't remember, "This is my house." I spoke each word slowly, deliberately. You can't just hire contractors and tear it apart without my explicit permission. This is not your property. My mother's expression hardened, a chilling coolness replacing her feigned confusion. Chloe, honey, don't be dramatic. We're doing this for the family. Your brother, Brandon, and Ashley are going to need more space soon, and this house is just sitting here empty most of the time. It makes perfect sense to make it more functional for when they visit. Her words hit me like a physical blow. For when Brandon and Ashley visit. For when they move in, my mother corrected gently, her tone sickeningly sweet. We've been talking about this for months, sweetheart. Brandon's marketing firm is expanding, and he wants to open a satellite office out here. The lake house is perfect for them. Plenty of room for an office, and Ashley has always just loved the water. Plus, you know, they're trying for a baby. The room's fun. Move in? Mom, this is my house. I bought it. I own it. Well, technically, my father interjected quietly. We helped with the down payment. You gave me $15,000 5 years ago as a birthday gift. I shot back, the control I'd been clinging to starting to fray. The remaining $75,000 came from my savings, and I've been paying the mortgage by myself ever since. My mother waved her hand again, as if brushing away an annoying fly. Nobody's giving anything to anyone, dear. We're just making it nicer for everyone to use. You're always so busy with work anyway. You barely come out here twice a month. Brandon and Ashley will actually live here. Take care of it properly. Get out, I said, the words barely audible, yet cutting. Chloe, get out of my house. Now. They left. My mother's sputtered protests faded into the afternoon air as my father, looking utterly defeated, guided her out to their car. I stood framed in the destroyed doorway, watching them drive away, a plume of dust rising from the gravel behind their tires like a ghost. The moment they vanished from view, I pulled out my phone and called the only person I knew would understand, the only one whose logical mind could cut through this absurd, painful fog. Chloe? My best friend, Megan's voice, was clear and laced with immediate concern through the phone. I thought you were at the lake house this weekend. No cell service, no contact, remember. Megan, I choked out, my voice cracking, I need help. They destroyed it. They destroyed my house. For the next 20 minutes, I poured out the entire story, the words tumbling out in a rush of shock and anger, while Megan listened, utterly silent, without interruption. When I finally finished, a long, heavy silence hung between us. So, your parents hired contractors to demolish your kitchen and living room without your permission, Megan summarized, her voice flat with disbelief. Because they're planning to give your house to your brother, Brandon. And apparently, this has all been discussed for months, and you somehow missed all of it. She scoffed. Chloe, that is not legal at all. They cannot just take over your property like this. I wiped at my eyes, the tears finally starting to fall. I know. I can't believe they actually did it. Megan made a disgusted sound. Your family has always treated Brandon like the golden child, but this is beyond anything I've ever heard before. What are you going to do? I looked around at the absolute wreckage. Years of my hard work, my meticulously saved money, all demolished in the name of my brother's convenience. Something hard and cold, a new kind of resolve, settled deep in my chest. I'm going to call my attorney, Daniel, I said, my voice steady now resolute. And then I'm going to make damn sure this never happens again. After I hung up, I walked slowly through the shell of my home, my phone camera documenting every single piece of destruction. The annihilated kitchen, the ravaged living room, the haphazardly scattered construction equipment. I photographed the boxes of new cabinets, clearly far more expensive than what I'd installed, and the high-end appliances still wrapped in their plastic shrouds. I drove into town, finding refuge in the only hotel near the lake, a small bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple who knew me from my frequent visits. "I thought you had the whole weekend at your place," the owner had said, his brow furrowed with concern. "Change of plans," I replied, forcing a tight smile. "Family issues." That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, the silence of the room a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind, I pulled out my laptop. I opened the file where I meticulously kept all my property documents. The deed was there, perfectly clear, utterly unambiguous. The house was in my name. Only my name. My parents had zero legal claim to it. I drafted an email to Daniel, explaining the entire surreal situation and requesting an emergency consultation. Then I opened my banking app, reviewing every mortgage statement, every property tax payment, every insurance record. Everything was in order. Everything was mine. Saturday morning, I drove back to the house, the light of day making the destruction even more glaring, more painful. I moved through each room like a ghost, meticulously noting every broken piece, every missing item on my phone. The custom light fixtures I'd commissioned from a craftsman in Fredericksburg? Gone. My meticulously refinished hardwood floors? Scratched, gouged, ruined. Even the built-in bookshelves and the cozy reading nook had been ripped out. I was documenting the fresh wounds when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the shattered window, I saw Brandon's silver sedan. My brother stepped out, followed by his wife, Ashley. Brandon, 3 years older than me at 34, possessed my father's tall frame and my mother's infuriatingly easy charm. He'd always been the favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong. Ashley, petite and blonde with a smile I'd never quite trusted, trailed behind him. They walked in without even a knock. "Chloe." "Hey." Brandon grinned, as if this were a normal, friendly visit. "Mom said you were upset about the renovation. I thought I'd come by and show you the plans. Once you see what we're doing, you're going to love it." I slowly, deliberately set my phone down. "Brandon," I began, my voice tight, "this is my house, right?" "Yeah, of course," he said, pulling out his own phone, ready to parade his vision of my future. "But Mom and Dad explained about the arrangement, right? How it makes more sense for Ashley and me to be out here full-time. You're barely here anyway." "There's no arrangement," I stated, each word a cold, hard fact. "This is my property. I own it. And nobody asked my permission before hiring contractors to tear it apart." Ashley stepped forward, her sympathetic smile plastered firmly in place. "Chloe, I know change is hard, but this is really going to be better for everyone." The kitchen was so outdated, and the living room layout was really closed off. "We're opening everything up, adding French doors to the deck, putting in a real master suite upstairs." "I don't care," I cut her off, the anger finally breaking through the shock. "I care that this is my house, and you two have absolutely no right to be here, making decisions about renovations I never approved." Brandon's smile evaporated. "Come on, Chloe. Don't be like this. Mom and Dad are helping us out, and it's not like you're even using the place. You're always working, always too busy for family." "Ashley, and I actually want to be here." The implication was clear, cutting. I was the selfish career woman, too obsessed with work to appreciate what I had, while Brandon and Ashley, noble and family-oriented, understood the true value of home. It was the same tired narrative I'd been fed my entire life. "Get out," I said, the words quiet but sharp. "Brandon, get out of my house right now. Both of you. Or I'm calling the police." Ashley's sweet smile curdled into something sharp, venomous. "You know, your mother was right. You are being incredibly selfish about this." "I'm acting like someone whose property was illegally vandalized," I countered, my voice low and dangerous. "Leave. Now." They left. And I stood alone in the ruins of my living room, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I called Daniel from the front porch, the view of the lake, once my source of profound peace, now strangely unsettling. He answered on the second ring. "Chloe," he said, his voice instantly recognizing the gravity in my email. "This is quite a situation. I explained everything that had happened since yesterday, including the confrontation with Brandon and Ashley. Daniel listened, a steady, calm presence. "All right," he finally said. "Here's what we're going to do. First, you need to document everything. Every piece of damage, every conversation, every text message. Second, I'm going to draft a cease and desist letter to the contractors and your family members, making it crystal clear that no further work is to be done without your written authorization. Third, we're sending formal notice that any family members currently occupying or attempting to occupy your property are doing so illegally." "My parents are going to lose their minds," I murmured, picturing the inevitable fallout. "That is not your problem," Daniel responded, his tone firm. "What they did is trespassing and destruction of property, at minimum. You would be well within your rights to press charges, though I wouldn't recommend starting there." "What about the renovation? Can I hold them liable for the costs?" "Absolutely. If they hired contractors without your permission, they are responsible for both the cost of the unauthorized work and the cost of restoring your property to its previous condition." "Do you have documentation of what the house looked like before?" I thought of the hundreds of photos, the endless albums on my phone, chronicling every improvement I'd ever made. "Yes, I have everything." "Good. Send me all of it. I'll put together a demand letter as well. And if they don't pay." Daniel paused, the implication hanging in the air. "Then we take them to court." "But Chloe, I have to ask, are you prepared for that? Suing your family is going to create a permanent rift." I looked at the exposed beams of my demolished living room, at the wreckage scattered across my floor. I thought of my mother's casual dismissal of my ownership, of Brandon's entitled assumption that he could just take what was mine. "Yes," I said, the word a steel-hard conviction. "I am prepared." That afternoon, I became a meticulous archivist of my own pain. I spent hours gathering every single piece of documentation I possessed, photos of the house before and after every improvement, receipts for appliances, furniture, custom work. My mortgage statements, property tax records, insurance policies. Screenshots of my mother's text messages, not a single one hinting at renovation plans. Even a recording of my conversation with Brandon and Ashley, which I'd started as soon as I heard their car pull up. I organized it all into digital folders and sent it to Daniel. Then I drafted a message to my family group chat. The words were difficult, but necessary. "I need to make something very clear," I wrote. "The lake house is my property. I purchased it with my own money. I pay the mortgage with my own money, and I am the sole owner according to the deed. No one had my permission to hire contractors or begin any renovations. Effective immediately, all work must stop, and all family members must vacate the property. My attorney will be sending formal notice of this shortly. Any further trespassing or damage to my property will result in legal action." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the send button. This was it. The moment I drew a line that would not be uncrossed. I hit send. The responses were almost instantaneous. My mother first, a ridiculously long paragraph about how hurt she was that I would threaten the family with legal action. My father's message was shorter, more resigned. "Chloe, you're overreacting." Brandon, predictably, was furious, accusing me of ruining his plans and being vindictive out of jealousy. I muted the group chat, setting my phone face down on the table, the vibrations a silent testament to the storm I'd unleashed. Sunday morning, I met Megan for coffee at a small cafe in town. She saw me, her eyes widening with concern, and pulled me into a tight hug. "You look terrible," she stated, direct as always, which is exactly why I loved her. Megan never sugarcoated anything. "I feel terrible," I admitted, slumping into my chair. As we sipped our coffees, I filled her in on every agonizing detail since our phone call. "I can't believe Brandon actually showed up and acted like he had a right to be there," I finished, shaking my head. "The entitlement is unreal," Megan said, disgusted. "That's the worst part," I agreed. "He genuinely doesn't see anything wrong with it." None of them do. "What did Daniel say?" "He's drafting all the legal notices. They should go out tomorrow. He thinks once my parents see official legal documents, they'll back down." Megan frowned, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. Do you think they will? I don't know, I confessed, watching the steam curl from my cup. The family I thought I knew would never have done this in the first place. My phone buzzed, vibrating on the table. Another message in the family group chat. This time, from my Aunt Carol. I cannot believe you would treat your parents this way after everything they have done for you. I showed it to Megan, who rolled her eyes. Let me guess. She has no idea what actually happened. She just heard your mom's version. Exactly. I muted notifications from Aunt Carol. More were already pouring in. Cousins, family friends, all apparently getting updates from my mother about my terrible behavior. You know what you need to do, Megan said, leaning forward, her gaze intense. Fight back. Not just legally, but publicly. If they're going to tell everyone you're unreasonable, you need to make sure people know the truth. I don't want to air family drama on social media, I protested, already dreading the thought. I'm not talking about social media, she clarified. I'm talking about facts. When people ask you what's going on, and they will, you tell them the truth. Your parents hired contractors to demolish your house without permission so they could give it to your brother. Period. No emotion, no drama, just facts. She was right. I'd spent my whole life trying to keep the peace, trying not to make waves. But staying quiet hadn't protected me. It had just made it easier for them to take advantage. Okay, I said, a new resolve hardening my voice. Facts only. I can do that. Monday morning arrived with an email from Daniel. The cease and desist letters had been sent, certified mail and email, to my parents, Brandon, Ashley, and the contracting company. I read through the legal language, stark and unambiguous, outlining my absolute ownership of the property and demanding an immediate halt to all work. A demand letter was also issued, requiring my parents to pay for all damage, with a 15-day deadline to respond. I was sitting in the hotel breakfast room when my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, instantly. Then my father. Then Brandon. I ignored them all, watching the voicemail notifications pile up, a sick satisfaction mixing with my apprehension. I waited until I finished my coffee, needing a moment of calm, before listening to them. My mother's voice was shrill with indignation and anger. Chloe, what have you done? We just received a legal threat from some attorney claiming we trespassed on your property. This is absurd. You need to call this off right now before you embarrass the entire family. My father sounded tired, deeply disappointed. Chloe, honey, I know you're upset, but getting lawyers involved is not the answer. Please call your mother back so we can work this out. Brandon was predictably furious. Are you kidding me right now? You sent us a cease and desist. Ashley is in tears. Mom is having a breakdown. All because you can't share a stupid house that you barely use. Grow up, Chloe. I deleted all the voicemails, a cold fury settling in. Then I opened my laptop. Time to start researching. Restoration contractors, to get quotes for fixing the wreckage they'd wrought. By Tuesday afternoon, I had estimates from 3 different contractors on the cost of restoring my house to its previous, pristine condition. The numbers were staggering. Between the custom cabinets they'd destroyed, the damaged hardwood floors, the missing fixtures, and the labor required to undo all the demolition work, I was looking at close to $90,000 in repairs. I sent all the estimates to Daniel with a blunt note. Does this seem reasonable? He called me instead of emailing back. The estimates are consistent with the scope of damage you documented, he confirmed. The problem is that demolition is always faster and cheaper than restoration. They tore out your kitchen in a day. It's going to take weeks to rebuild it properly. And since you had custom work before, you're going to pay custom prices to replace it. $90,000, I repeated, the number feeling surreal, a punch to the gut. Yes, and that's actually on the conservative end. If you wanted to upgrade to the level of finishes they were planning to install for your brother, it would be significantly more. I don't want what they were planning, I said, my voice tight. I want what I had. Understood. I'll include these estimates in our demand to your parents. Speaking of which, we received a response from their attorney this morning. My stomach dropped. They hired a lawyer. It wasn't a question. They did. A friend of your father's, apparently. The response isn't strong. He's arguing that your parents had implied permission to make improvements based on your conversation at dinner and their financial contribution to your down payment 5 years ago. That's ridiculous, I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. I agree. And frankly, so would any judge. The law is very clear on property ownership. But it does mean they're fighting this, rather than accepting responsibility. I closed my eyes, a wave of profound disappointment washing over me. Part of me, a naive, hopeful part, had genuinely believed that once they saw the legal documents, they would back down. That they would apologize. That hope was dead now. What's our next step? I asked, my voice flat. We file a lawsuit. Civil trespass and destruction of property. We sue for the cost of repairs, plus damages for loss of use of your property during the restoration period, plus legal fees. Given the documentation you have, this is a straightforward case. How long will it take? Could be anywhere from 6 months to a year before we get to trial, unless they settle. But in the meantime, we can request an emergency restraining order preventing any further work on the property and requiring your family members to stay away. Do it, I said, without a moment's hesitation. All of it. The next few days blurred into a haze of legal documents and contractor calls. I immediately hired one of the restoration companies, paying out of my rapidly dwindling savings, meticulously documenting every single expense. The restraining order was granted, the judge clearly unimpressed by my family's flimsy legal arguments. My parents and Brandon were ordered to stay at least 500 feet from my property until the case was resolved. The family fallout was immediate and utterly brutal. My phone exploded with messages from relatives I barely knew, all echoing the same infuriating sentiment. I was destroying the family over money. My mother's best friend called, her voice dripping with judgment, to tell me I should be ashamed of myself. Even my grandmother, 86 years old and usually the kindest soul, left a voicemail, her voice tight with disappointment, saying she was disappointed in the woman I had become. Only Megan and a handful of my work friends truly understood. They're circling the wagons, Megan observed grimly when I showed her some of the messages. Classic family behavior. You're threatening the established order, so everyone's rallying to protect it. I just wanted them to admit what they did was wrong, I said, the words heavy with frustration. And pay to fix it. That's all. You don't have to destroy anything, Megan corrected softly. You just have to stand up for yourself. And in your family? That's the same thing. By Friday, exactly 1 week after I discovered the destruction, I was back in Austin for work. The restoration on the house was underway, the contractor promising completion in 6 weeks. The lawsuit was filed, the restraining order firmly in place. And I hadn't spoken directly to a single member of my immediate family since that group chat message. I threw myself into work, desperate for the distraction, but my concentration was shot. My phone was a constant companion, my eyes drawn to it, checking for updates from Daniel, from the contractor, for new messages from relatives desperate to tell me what a terrible person I was. Then, on Wednesday afternoon at my desk, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, a habit I'd quickly developed, but something, a flicker of intuition, made me answer. Is this Chloe? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, who is this? My name is Laura. I'm calling from Henderson Construction, the company that was doing work on your property before we received the cease and desist letter. I wanted to reach out personally because something about this situation has been bothering me. Laura continued, her voice careful, measured. When your parents hired us, they presented documentation that they said proved they had the right to authorize work on the property. After we received the legal notice from your attorney, I pulled our file to review everything. Okay, I said slowly, my heart rate beginning to pick up. The documents they showed us were partially falsified, or at least they misrepresented what they were. They had a copy of your property deed, but they told us it was in their name. They also had what they claimed was a power of attorney, giving them the right to make decisions about the property. After your attorney's letter, I had our legal team verify the deed. It's in your name only, exactly as you stated. There is no power of attorney on file with the county. I felt cold, a chill running through my veins. They forged documents to hire you? Not forged exactly, Laura clarified, more like they lied about what the documents meant. But yes, essentially, they misrepresented their authority to hire us. If we had known they didn't have legal permission, we never would have accepted the job. Why are you telling me this? I asked, suspicious, but a spark of hope was igniting. Laura hesitated for a moment. Because I've been in this business for 20 years, and I know the difference between a family disagreement and something more serious. What your parents did crosses a line. You deserve to know exactly what happened. Also, frankly, we don't want to be caught in the middle of this lawsuit. If you need any documentation from us about what we were told and what documents we were shown, we will provide it. After I hung up with Laura, I sat at my desk for a long, heavy time, staring at my computer screen but seeing nothing. My parents had lied to the contractors. They had deliberately misrepresented documents to make it seem like they had the authority to demolish my house. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a difference of opinion about family property. This was calculated, outright deception. I called Daniel immediately, my voice still trembling with suppressed rage, and told him everything Laura had revealed. That changes things, he said, his voice grim. If they knowingly misrepresented their authority to the contractors, that could be fraud. It certainly strengthens our civil case significantly. Can you get a written statement from Laura? She said they would provide documentation. Good. Follow up with her and get everything in writing. This might be enough to push them toward a settlement. Most people don't want to go to trial when there's evidence of deliberate deception. But my parents did not settle. Instead, their attorney sent a blistering response, claiming Laura was lying to protect her company from liability, that my parents had every right to make improvements to a property they had helped purchase, and that I was being vindictive and using the legal system to punish them for treating my brother fairly. I read the response twice, feeling something brittle and precious break inside me. They weren't going to admit what they did. They weren't going to take responsibility. They weren't going to fight this all the way, and they were going to keep insisting they were the victims. That night, I called Megan, my voice small. I need to know something. Be honest. Am I being unreasonable? Is there any part of this where I'm in the wrong? Chloe, no. Absolutely not, she said, her voice firm, unwavering. They destroyed your house without permission. They lied to contractors to do it. They are trying to give your property to your brother. There is no universe where you are the bad guy here. Then why does it feel like the whole world thinks I am? I whispered, the raw ache in my chest overwhelming. Because your family has spent your entire life making you believe that your needs don't matter as much as Brandon's, Megan said, her words blunt, cutting through the fog. And now you are finally pushing back, and they can't handle it. So they are mobilizing everyone they know to make you feel guilty and back down. It's manipulation, Chloe. Classic manipulation. I knew she was right. But knowing it didn't make the pain hurt any less. The lawsuit moved forward, slowly, agonizingly, grinding through discovery and depositions. My parents' attorney, true to form, tried every delay tactic in the book, continuances, extensions, additional time to respond to every filing. Daniel confirmed it was standard practice for someone trying to drag things out, but it was utterly exhausting. 3 months after I first discovered the destruction, I was deposed by my parents' attorney in a sterile conference room in Austin. He was exactly what I expected, middle-aged, overly confident, wearing an expensive suit and a condescending, patronizing smile. Chloe, he began, his voice dripping with false concern, can you explain to me why you believe your parents, who contributed $15,000 to your down payment and whom you love very much, would deliberately destroy your property? I don't believe they thought of it as destruction, I said carefully, exactly as Daniel had coached me. I believe they thought they had the right to make these decisions because they have never respected my ownership of the property. But intention does not change the fact that they hired contractors to demolish my kitchen and living room without my permission. But you did give permission, did you not? At dinner, when your mother mentioned the renovations. No, I cut him off. My mother mentioned something about updating at some point. I was not paying full attention, and I may have made a non-committal sound. That is not the same as giving permission for the level of work that was done. So, you admit you were not paying attention to your own mother, he pressed, his smile widening triumphantly. Daniel placed a firm hand on my arm. That is not a question. Please move on. The deposition dragged on for 3 grueling hours. They probed my relationship with my parents, with Brandon, how often I used the house, my finances, whether I was jealous of my brother's marriage. They tried every angle to paint me as an unreasonable, difficult person making trouble over nothing. I answered every question calmly, factually, exactly as we had practiced. When it was finally over, Daniel told me I had done well, but I felt hollowed out, utterly drained. "They're going to settle," Daniel said as we packed up our files. "That deposition did not go the way they hoped. Your testimony was clear and consistent, and there is nothing they can use against you. Plus, we have the contractor testimony. They know they are going to lose at trial." "When?" I asked, a flicker of something new, hope, perhaps, igniting. "Could be weeks, could be a couple of months, but it's coming." I drove back to the lake house that evening, the weight of the deposition heavy on my shoulders. The restoration was nearly complete. The contractor had worked steadily for the past 3 months, and the kitchen looked almost exactly as it had before. The living room was finished, the hardwood floors refinished, new drywall painted, even the furniture replaced. It looked like my house again. But it didn't feel the same. Not yet. For months after that initial, horrifying discovery, I received a call from Daniel on a Tuesday morning. "They're offering to settle." "For how much?" My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Full cost of restoration, plus your legal fees." No admission of wrongdoing, but a statement that they regret the misunderstanding and will not contest your ownership of the property. I mulled it over. The restoration had cost $87,000. My legal fees were already climbing past $40,000. This would make me whole, financially at least. But it would do absolutely nothing for the gaping emotional wounds. "What do you recommend?" I asked. "Take it," Daniel advised, pragmatic as always. "I know you want them to admit they were wrong, but you're not going to get that. This gets you paid back, and it ends the legal battle. You can move on with your life." Moving on with my life. That sounded so appealing. So simple. Except I knew my family. They would tell everyone they had done nothing wrong. They would say they settled, just to end my vindictive lawsuit. They would frame themselves as the bigger people for not dragging this through the courts. The narrative would still paint me as the problem. "Give me 24 hours to think about it," I said, needing space to breathe, to decide. That night, I sat on the deck of my lake house, looking out at the water under the moonlight. The house was mine again, fully restored, legally protected. The lawsuit would end. I would get my money back. Everything would go back to normal. But then the thought struck me. It wouldn't. Because normal had meant being the family member who was always expected to accommodate everyone else. Normal had meant watching Brandon get preferential treatment and staying quiet about it. Normal had meant letting small violations slide until they metastasized into monstrous ones. I didn't want normal anymore. I called Daniel the next morning. "I want a counteroffer." "All right. What do you have in mind?" "Full cost of restoration, legal fees, and an additional one. $100,000 in damages for emotional distress and loss of use of property," I stated, my voice firm. "Plus a written apology, signed by both parents, that acknowledges they did not have permission to hire contractors or authorize work on my property, to be provided to the contractors and filed with the county property records." Daniel was quiet for a moment, the silence crackling with the weight of my demands. "Chloe, that's going to push us back toward trial. They are not going to agree to that." "Then we go to trial," I said, resolute. I'm done pretending this wasn't as bad as it was. 2 weeks later, my parents flatly rejected the counteroffer. Their attorney, in a scathing response, called my demands outrageous and vindictive, declaring they'd rather take their chances with a jury than give in to my extortion. Daniel scheduled the trial for 8 weeks out. Those weeks were consumed by more preparations, more depositions, this time for my parents and Brandon. I wasn't present, but Daniel later told me they hadn't gone well for them. My mother, he recounted, got emotional and defensive, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under questioning. My father contradicted himself several times regarding what documents they had shown the contractors. And Brandon, under oath, admitted he had been planning to move into the house permanently and that our parents had explicitly promised it to him. That last part is actually incredibly helpful, Daniel noted. It establishes that this wasn't just about improvements. They were actively trying to transfer the property to your brother without your knowledge or consent. The trial itself spanned 3 intense days. My parents' attorney, predictable in his strategy, attempted to paint me as an ungrateful daughter, estranged from her loving family over a simple misunderstanding. He showed photos of happy family holidays, of me and Brandon as smiling kids, of my parents beaming at my college graduation. He even called relatives to testify about what a close family we used to be. But when Daniel cross-examined those same relatives, none of them could explain how being a close family justified demolishing someone's house without permission. None of them could defend the falsified power of attorney or the lies told to contractors. I testified on the second day. Daniel walked me through everything, from buying the house to the improvements I had made, the years of mortgage payments, the care I'd poured into it, to the shocking discovery of the destruction and the infuriating conversations with my family. I kept my voice steady, factual, unwavering, even when my parents' attorney tried every tactic to provoke me. I am happy for my brother's successes, I said calmly when asked about Brandon. But his success does not entitle him to my property. Laura, the contractor from Henderson Construction, testified on the third day. She brought with her a stack of documentation detailing everything my parents had told her company, including notes from the initial consultation where my mother had brazenly claimed she and my father were the property owners, intending to do renovations before transferring it to their son. The falsified power of attorney was entered into evidence, with an expert witness testifying that it had never been properly executed or filed. By the end of the third day, it was obvious. My parents' attorney knew he was losing. His closing argument focused almost entirely on emotional manipulation, about family bonds and forgiveness, and how tragic it was that I was willing to destroy my relationship with my parents over money. Daniel's closing was shorter, sharper, and far more direct. This case is not about family dynamics or emotional disputes. It is about property rights and the rule of law. The defendants do not own this property. They did not have permission to hire contractors or authorize work on this property. They deliberately misrepresented their authority to those contractors. They caused $87,000 in damage. The law is clear. They are liable for that damage, and the plaintiff is entitled to compensation. The jury deliberated for 4 agonizing hours. When they came back, the verdict was clear, resounding, and in my favor on every single count. The judge awarded me the full cost of restoration, all legal fees, and an additional $75,000 in damages. He also issued a permanent injunction, a legal wall, preventing my parents or Brandon from ever entering the property or making any claims to it. And, perhaps most satisfyingly, he ordered my parents to sign a document acknowledging they had acted without authorization, to be filed with the county. I sat in the courtroom, watching my mother openly weep, her face a mask of crumpled despair. My father stared blankly at the table, his face ashen, gray with defeat. Brandon looked absolutely furious, whispering angrily to Ashley beside him. Their attorney, his shoulders slumped, gathered his papers quickly, clearly eager to be done with the entire humiliating affair. Daniel leaned over, a slight, knowing smile on his face. You won. Completely. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad and relieved all at once. Outside the courthouse, my parents and Brandon slipped away through a side exit, avoiding me entirely. I stood on the front steps with Daniel and Megan, who had taken the day off work to be there, a steadfast pillar of support. What now? Megan asked gently, her arm around my shoulders. Now, I said, looking out at the bustling city, now I try to figure out what my life looks like, minute by minute, without them in it. That weekend, I finally returned to the lake house. It was mid-October, the weather perfect, the trees just beginning to blush with autumn colors. I walked through every room, Slowly, deliberately, my fingers tracing the smooth, restored cabinets, the newly refinished floors, the new furniture that was close enough to what I'd chosen before. It was mine. Completely, unequivocally, legally mine, with court documents to prove it. No one could take it from me now. I made dinner in my restored kitchen, pasta with fresh vegetables from the farmer's market in town. I ate on the deck, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the water in hues of orange and purple, and felt the immense tension I'd been carrying for 6 agonizing months finally, slowly, begin to ease. My phone buzzed. A message from Megan. "How is it?" "Peaceful," I typed back. Finally peaceful. The next morning, I woke early and went for a run along the lake trail, the crisp air a balm to my soul. When I returned, there was a car in my driveway, my grandmother's old sedan. I approached cautiously, my guard still up. Grandma was sitting on my front porch, a woven basket resting beside her. "I brought muffins," she said, her voice soft when she saw me. "Blueberry. Your favorite." I sat down on the step below her, not quite ready to trust this unexpected visit. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize," she said, her eyes, older and more fragile than I remembered, meeting mine. "I was wrong about what I said to you. I was wrong to take your mother's side without asking for your side of the story. And I was wrong to think that family always means accepting whatever treatment we get." "Mom told you her version," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "She did. And I believed her because I wanted to believe that my daughter wouldn't do something so hurtful to her own child. But then I heard about the trial. About what actually happened. About the lies and the documents and all of it. And I realized your mother was wrong. Your father was wrong. And I was wrong for judging you." Tears pricked at my eyes, a surprising warmth spreading through me. "Thank you for saying that. I know it doesn't fix things," she continued, "and I know you might not want a relationship with me anymore after the things I said. But I wanted you to know that I see the truth now. And I am proud of you for standing up for yourself." We sat together in silence for a long while, eating the blueberry muffins, watching the gentle ripple of the lake. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a quiet, fragile start. "Your mother isn't doing well," Grandma said eventually, breaking the stillness. "The judgment hit them hard financially, and Brandon is furious with both of them. Apparently, he took out a loan based on their promise that he would have this house, and now he's stuck with debt and no property to show for it." I thought about that. My parents hadn't just tried to steal my house. They had made impossible promises to Brandon, setting him up for his own disappointment and crushing debt. "That's unfortunate," I said, carefully. "But it's not my responsibility to fix." "No," Grandma agreed, her voice firm. "It is not. They made their choices. Now they have to live with the consequences." 3 months after the trial, a certified letter arrived from my parents' attorney. They were declaring bankruptcy. The enormous judgment against them, combined with their escalating legal fees and the debt they had taken on for the renovation they had so foolishly planned, had utterly decimated their finances. Their house, the one they'd lived in for decades, was going into foreclosure. They were moving into a rental apartment. I called Daniel immediately, the news hitting me with a strange mix of shock and a grim satisfaction. "Can they do this?" "They can declare bankruptcy, yes," Daniel confirmed. "Whether the debt gets discharged, though, depends on how the court views the circumstances. Given that the debt arose from intentional wrongdoing rather than normal business circumstances, we have grounds to argue it should not be discharged. But it's going to be another legal fight." I sat with that information, the exhaustion already creeping in. Another legal fight. More attorneys, more court dates, more stress. And even if I won, my parents had no money. What was the point? "What do you want to do?" Daniel asked, his voice gentle. "I don't know," I admitted, the fatigue heavy in my voice. "Part of me wants to fight it, to see justice completely served. But another part is just exhausted. Take some time to think about it. We have 60 days to respond." 6 weeks after the bankruptcy filing, I got a phone call that changed everything. "Chloe, this is Laura from Henderson Construction," a voice said. "Do you have a minute to talk?" "Of course," I replied, surprised by the call. I wanted to give you a heads up about something, Laura continued. Your brother, Brandon, contacted us last week. He's asking for copies of all our files related to your property. He said he's considering filing his own lawsuit against your parents for promising him property they didn't have the right to give away. I sat down hard. Brandon is suing Mom and Dad. That's what it sounds like, Laura confirmed. He's claiming they defrauded him by making promises about your house, causing him to take out loans and make plans based on those promises. He wanted our documentation to support his case. After I hung up, I sat in stunned, disbelieving silence. Brandon, the golden child, was suing our parents. The very son they'd tried to give my house to was turning on them, furious that their elaborate schemes had left him in debt. Whatever fantasy they had carefully built, where the family rallied around them, had utterly collapsed. I called my grandmother, who confirmed it, her voice tinged with a complex mix of sadness and vindication. He filed papers last week. Your mother called me in hysterics. She can't understand how her own son could do this to her. I pointed out that she couldn't understand how her own daughter could sue her either, Grandma added, a dry note entering her voice. But apparently, that's different. Is it though? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping me. No, Grandma said, her voice firm. It is not different at all. Brandon's lawsuit alleged fraud, breach of promise, and severe financial harm. He was seeking damages for the loan payments he'd made, for the expectation of living in my lake house, for the costs of his canceled plans, and for emotional distress. Unlike my straightforward property damage case, his was messy, convoluted, and deeply personal. I watched from a distance as my family tore itself apart, the last vestiges of any functional relationship dissolving. My parents' bankruptcy was delayed, held hostage, while they dealt with Brandon's lawsuit. Family members who had called me vindictive were now sharply split, some supporting Brandon, others appalled that he would sue his own parents. My mother tried to call me twice. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, increasingly desperate, asking me to talk to Brandon, to tell him to drop the lawsuit, to help fix this mess, as if I owed her anything. I deleted the voicemails without responding. In April, 9 months after I first discovered the utter destruction of my house, I stood in my Austin office, looking out at the glittering city skyline. My boss had just offered me a promotion to senior broker, a significant raise, and my own team to lead. You have been one of our best performers, she'd said, her voice genuine, even while dealing with personal issues that would have derailed most people. That is the kind of resilience we value. I accepted the promotion, a quiet satisfaction settling deep within me. That night, Megan took me out to celebrate. We went to a fantastic steakhouse in downtown Austin, ordered the most expensive wine, and raised our glasses. You did it, Megan said, her eyes shining. You fought for yourself. You won. And you are thriving. That's the best revenge of all. Is it revenge? I asked, a thoughtful frown creasing my brow, if I'm just living my life? Absolutely, she affirmed, a wry smile playing on her lips. The best revenge is success and happiness while the people who wronged you implode. You have both. I thought about my parents, now in their cramped rental apartment, facing bankruptcy and a devastating lawsuit from their own son. I thought about Brandon, deep in debt, his golden child status utterly tarnished, his reputation shattered. I thought about the extended family members who had once called me selfish, now quietly watching the bitter consequences unfold for everyone else. And then I thought about myself, in my restored lake house on weekends, in my comfortable Austin apartment during the week, with a new promotion and a life I had built entirely on my own terms. Yeah, I said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my face. I guess it is. The bankruptcy proceedings, another agonizing layer of legal wrangling, dragged on. Through the spring, the judge scheduled a hearing for late July. I didn't want to go, not really, but Daniel insisted I needed to be there. My parents sat on the other side of the courtroom with their bankruptcy attorney, looking older, more defeated than I'd ever seen them. My mother's hair had gone almost completely white, her vibrant energy replaced by a brittle weariness. My father had lost weight, his suit hanging loose on his frame. Brandon was there, too, with his own attorney, objecting to the bankruptcy discharge because it would impact his ability to collect on his own judgment against them. He didn't even glance my way. The hearing lasted 2 hours. My parents' attorney painted a sorrowful picture of two elderly people who had made a simple mistake and were now being punished beyond reason. He argued that forcing them to pay would leave them destitute. Daniel, calm and formidable, countered that they had deliberately defrauded contractors and attempted to steal property, and that allowing them to discharge that debt would send a dangerous message, that such behavior carried no consequences. When it was over, the judge took the matter under advisement, promising a ruling within 30 days. I left the courthouse and drove straight to the lake house, needing the familiar comfort, the quiet peace that only it could offer. I sat on my deck with a cold drink, trying and mostly failing not to think about my parents' shattered faces. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Ashley. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach, before slowly responding. "About what?" "About everything, please," came her reply. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I would like to explain some things. Can I buy you coffee?" Against every fiber of my better judgment, I agreed to meet her the following weekend at a coffee shop, exactly halfway between Austin and where she and Brandon were now living. She looked different. Thinner, more tired, her usual polished appearance replaced by a slightly frayed, almost fearful demeanor. We got our coffees and settled into a corner table. "Thank you for meeting me," Ashley said, her voice soft, tentative. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm not sure why I did," I admitted, my guard still firmly in place. "What do you want, Ashley?" She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, her gaze fixed on the steam rising from it. "I want to apologize. And I want to explain what was happening behind the scenes. Things you didn't know about." "Okay," I said, wearily, bracing myself. "Your mother came to us about 2 years ago with the idea of the lake house. She said you barely used it, that it would be perfect for Brandon's satellite office plan. We were hesitant at first, but she was so persuasive. She made it sound like you had basically agreed." "I never agreed to anything," I interjected, a cold certainty in my voice. "I know that now," Ashley said, her voice quiet, "but your mother was so convincing. Your parents took out a home equity loan on their house to pay for the renovation. They told us it was an investment, that they were making the house nicer before transferring it to Brandon. They promised that once the work was done, you would just sign the property over. Because it was the right thing to do for family. That was never going to happen," I stated, a bitter laugh escaping me. "I know. And I think deep down Brandon knew it too. But your mother was so certain, so confident. She had this whole vision worked out, and we wanted to believe it because we needed it to be true. Brandon's business wasn't doing as well as he let people believe. The idea of having the lake house, of not having to pay rent or a mortgage somewhere, was really appealing." She paused, taking a slow sip of her coffee. "When you refused to go along with it, when you sent that cease and desist letter, your mother told us you were being vindictive and jealous. She said you had always been difficult about Brandon's success. We believed her. I believed her, and I said terrible things to you because I thought you were being selfish. You called me a spoiled child," she finished, her voice barely a whisper. "I know," I said, the memory still fresh and painful. "I am so sorry. I was wrong about all of it. Your mother manipulated us, and we let her because it served our interests. But you were right. It was your house. You had every right to protect it. Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my skepticism warring with a dawning understanding. Ashley looked down at her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "Because I'm divorcing Brandon. The stress of all this, the lawsuits, the debt, it destroyed us. But more than that, I realized that Brandon is exactly like your mother. He feels entitled to things that are not his. He blames other people when his plans don't work out. And I don't want to spend my life with someone like that." We sat in silence for a while, the bustling coffee shop around us, a world away from the intimate, raw confession unfolding between us. "I don't forgive you," I said eventually, the words difficult, honest. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I appreciate you telling me this." Ashley nodded, her eyes filled with a weary resignation. That's fair. I just wanted you to know that not everything was as it seemed. Your mother orchestrated a lot of this. And while Brandon and I were willing participants, we were also being manipulated. After she left, I sat alone in the coffee shop for a long time, meticulously processing everything. My parents had taken out a home equity loan to fund the renovation. They had promised the house to Brandon as if it were theirs to give. They had built an entire fantasy and convinced themselves it would work out. And when I, the inconvenient obstacle, refused to play along, the whole elaborate, selfish thing had imploded. The bankruptcy judge issued his ruling in August. He allowed my parents to discharge most of their other debts. But he specifically, pointedly, excluded the judgment I held against them. His written opinion stated, in no uncertain terms, that debts arising from intentional wrongdoing and fraud could not be discharged. It meant they still owed me the full amount of the judgment. They would be making payments to me for years. Daniel called to tell me the news. This is a significant win. The judge saw through their attempt to escape responsibility. They'll never actually pay it, though, I said, a pragmatic sigh escaping me. They're living on fixed income. Probably not, Daniel admitted, his voice softening. But that's not really the point anymore, is it? He was right. The money didn't matter as much as I thought it would. What truly mattered was that I had stood up for myself. And I had won. Brandon's messy lawsuit against our parents eventually settled out of court in September. The terms were confidential, but my grandmother, ever the family historian, told me that our parents agreed to sign over the title to their car and make small monthly payments, a mere fraction of what he had initially demanded. The family is completely fractured now, Grandma confided, her voice tinged with genuine sorrow. Your parents aren't speaking to either of their children. Brandon and Ashley's divorce, she added, was particularly ugly. Half the extended family had taken sides, or simply stopped attending events altogether. Thanksgiving is going to be awkward. I'm not going to be there anyway, I said, the thought of it sending a shiver down my spine. I know, she replied. But I wanted you to hear it from me. Your mother keeps saying that you destroyed the family with your selfishness. But those of us who are paying attention know that is not true. She destroyed the family by trying to steal from you. In October, a year after that initial, devastating discovery, I threw a party at the lake house. Not a family gathering, no. This was a party for my chosen family, my friends, my colleagues, the people who had genuinely supported me. Megan helped me plan it, and we invited 30 people for an incredible autumn afternoon. People swam in the lake, even though the water was growing colder. We grilled food, laughter echoing across the water. Someone brought a guitar and played folk songs as the sun set in a blaze of glory. I stood on my deck, looking out at the faces of the people who had chosen to be in my life, and felt a profound, overwhelming gratitude. This is nice, Megan said, coming to stand beside me, her smile reflecting mine. You look happy. I am happy, I said, the words a revelation, a whispered truth. I realized, for the first time in a year, I am actually happy. Good, she squeezed my arm gently. You deserve it. My parents never truly recovered, either financially or emotionally, from the double blow of my lawsuit and Brandon's. Their bankruptcy left them with ruined credit and severely limited options. My mother, who had once been the vibrant social center of the family, found herself increasingly isolated as more relatives quietly learned the full, ugly truth about what she had done. Sunday dinners stopped. Holiday gatherings became strained, awkward, sparsely attended affairs, filled with uncomfortable silences. My father's apology letters to various family members had circulated, cementing their role as the villains in this saga, rather than mine. Brandon's business struggled under the crushing weight of his debt, and his reputation took a severe hit when word spread about him suing his own parents. His divorce from Ashley was finalized, with her getting most of their shared assets, leaving him in a small apartment, working twice as hard for half the success he once enjoyed. The golden child was well and truly tarnished, and no amount of frantic defending could polish that away. I stood on my dock one evening in November, looking at my house, my property, my sanctuary, the one I had fought for, bled 4-1 back. I felt something subtle, deep, and peaceful in my chest. The searing anger was gone. The raw hurt was finally fading. What remained was a quiet, unshakable certainty that I had done the right thing, even when it was incredibly hard, even when it cost me relationships I had once desperately valued. I had learned that protecting yourself is not selfish, that standing up for your rights is not vindictive, and that sometimes the very people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you most, if you let them. Looking back on everything, the shocking discovery, the painful fights, the grueling lawsuits, the long, torturous year of reclaiming what was rightfully mine, I realized this was never really about a house at all. It was about refusing to disappear, refusing to be convenient, refusing to sacrifice myself for people who saw me only as an obstacle to what they wanted. And in that refusal, in that fight, in that unwavering stand, I had finally, truly, found myself again. So, here I am, rebuilding my life, piece by piece, just like my house. It was a brutal journey, but I wouldn't change a thing. Tell me, if your own family turned against you like this, would you have fought them, or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts below. I'm reading every single comment.